Yo, partnership alert, partnership alert, partnership alert. Living Corporate has a partnership with LinkedIn Learning, an American massive open online course provider that provides video courses taught by industry experts across a wide array of subjects. Now, the partnership is because Living Corporate has courses on LinkedIn Learning focused on diversity, equity, inclusion for leaders, career professionals, and anyone really looking to upskill themselves and be better allies. So make sure you check out our courses on LinkedIn Learning by clicking the link in the show notes. And let's just say you don't want to do that. When you go to LinkedIn Learning on LinkedIn, search Living Corporate. We'll be right there. All right? Peace.
Welcome to the break room where you have a moment to take a break and we focus on all things Black mental health in the workplace. I am Dr. LaWanda Hill, one of the co-hosts, one of the 4 co-hosts of the break room. My lovely co-hosts have been holding it down. I've been away for some time. So I had a surgery and I'm back and I'm super excited to be back because we have an amazing guest with us, Casey Cross. I'm gonna hype them up. Casey is in the mix and I'm super excited, y'all, because we're talking about genderqueer in the workplace and we're going to have a specific focus on mental health tonight. So I want to just take a moment to pause and welcome all of you who will be listening to this recording later. Welcome all of you who are joining us live. We like to give an overview of what the break room is, who it focuses on, and what our flow is, so you'll know how we move. So we usually open up the break room. Well, let me back up a little bit. Like I said, we are a crew of 4 Black doctors who come together every Thursday to talk Black mental health in the workplace. We have Dr. Jade, who's a social psychologist, Dr. Nikki, who is a counseling psychologist and former academic. And we have Dr. Brian, who is a psychiatrist, and myself, Dr. LaWanda Hill, who is I am a psychologist and curator of spaces. And we just come together and keep it 100 when our goal is to center Black mental health and talk about that in the workplace. So that's who we are and what we bring to the table. Welcome to you all who are with us live. Justin, it's good to have you. Our flow is, we move through a flow. When we intro, we do a tea. Y'all, we really do what's been the tea for the last week. We like to keep things current, what's relevant. And I was talking to Casey, and I was like, do you even know what's happened? I've been out of it because I had surgery. That's my excuse. And Casey has been moving. So we don't really know what's popping in the streets. If y'all know what's popping in the streets, drop it in the comments. And
let us know.
Let us know, because we do not know what's popping in the streets. So we start off with the tea, and then we move into our topic. And we usually will either address that as the experts in the room, or we'll have a guest who can address that in the room. And I'm so excited about Casey as our guest tonight. And then we take a moment to take questions from the audience and address that. And then we wrap up with our last nerve. Right? So everybody know what that last nerve mean as Black folks. Like, people have been irritating you, they've been aggravating you, and they done got on your last damn nerve. And we take a moment, we put our timer on 60 to 90 seconds. Sometimes we go to 120 seconds, 2 full minutes. And we say, this is what that last nerve is. I'm going to give it to you, Casey, because I'm going to let you take the last nerve tonight as our special guest. And then we wrap up and we put it on repeat for the next week. So that's our flow for those of you who are new to the break room. I'm going to hop in because we're getting ready to, in honor of Pride Month, we're getting ready to talk about gender queerness 1, and then what that looks like in the workplace and the impact of mental health. And so without further ado, I want to introduce Casey. Casey uses they, them pronouns, and they are a licensed professional counselor in Northwest Arkansas. So we got another mental health professional in the building, which is why I think you are the perfect guest. Casey is a mental health and performance clinician for the University of Arkansas Razorbacks. And I always want to know what that experience is like, as I consider myself an athlete. As that, I'm like, what is it like? Which I hope we can kind of squeeze into the conversation. What's it like to be a mental health professional for the Razorbacks? Yeah. And so for 6 years, Casey has worked in university counseling centers, servicing the LGBTQ plus community and BIPOC students. They've also provided trainings, workshops around gender, around sexuality and race to enhance organizations' knowledge and their service towards these diverse and racial identities, which we are hoping to do tonight. We're going to provide some education around sexuality, around gender as it relates for Black folks and their mental health, so that people who are listening can either be validated, be seen, understand, and people who do not identify as these populations can enhance their knowledge and understanding so as to be more queer affirming. KC is very passionate about creating spaces for women, trans, gender nonconforming, and or non-binary individuals to explore their sexuality free of shame and providing healthy education around healthy sexual behaviors. And so you can follow KC on IG at KC Cross 3. KC's always into some biking, always active, always doing something. And also feel free to check out their YouTube station. And I will ask you to put that in the chat a little bit later on tonight, where KC describes their experience with gender dysphoria and as a Black and non-binary masked individual. So that's KC. I met KC, y'all, through Happy Pride Month. I met KC through a good friend of mine, Danielle Amajoy, who I work with at Stanford. And we did our first session right after the Taraji show dropped.
Yeah.
Taraji show dropped on Black trans. And then Casey and I had a conversation about like gender and sexuality one-on-one. We had a very dope time, and I'm hoping to recreate that tonight as well. So I just want to give you a moment to just kind of take that in. Anything you want to say to the people before we even dive into the conversation, Casey?
Ooh, you put me on the spot. I don't know if I got anything I want to say, but what's up, everybody? You gonna hear a little bit of my country accent coming out. LaWanda already talked about me from being from Arkansas tonight, so try not to make too much fun of me.
We'll try. I was like, Casey, what you doing in Arkansas? Like, help me understand. Like, I just don't.
It's so funny the number of people that I meet, and they be like, "You in Arkansas?" But then when they like come visit and they like see the spot that I'm in, they're like, "Okay, this makes sense. This makes sense."
That helps me. I'm trying
to put Arkansas on the map.
Put them on the map, Casey.
It's got to start somewhere.
Arkansas, like, make me want to visit Arkansas in some way.
Well, you know how it goes. Like back in the day, like we had a bunch of Black people down here in the South, and then everybody tried to get out of the South, go to Chicago, go to LA, get away from all these white people. But then you got the folks of us that some of us that stayed down here. So we trying to bring y'all back.
Yes.
Trying to get y'all back down here.
So I will say this. If y'all from, those of you who are listening, who are in the audience, if you're from Arkansas, no shade. I think this is a perfect pivot for our conversation. I really was like, is Arkansas queer friendly and queer affirming is what I was concerned about. And so Casey was talking about how there is a different space that is kind of queer affirming and safe, psychologically safe as well as physically safe. So I think let's just hop into the combo tonight. So as we all know, June is Pride Month, and I enjoy pausing to really reflect on the history of Pride, what it is, what it means, what it should entail. I think it can get co-opted by commercialism, and I hate that. And so I wanted, from your lens, Casey, if you could just give us a brief history of how did Pride start? Yeah. And what does it mean to you?
Yeah, so I told you earlier, I'm gonna try to keep this as concise as possible, because there's so much history out there, and I think more and more of it is coming out as we're actually looking for these stories. But I feel like every June we hear like the first Pride was a riot, and that's true. But I think if you do your research, most places would be like the first Pride started at Stonewall. And I think that's the one that's the most well known. But from what I've known, from what I've learned from other queers, my ancestors, is that Pride really started out in California. There was you had a riot out in Compton. I think it's called the Compton Cafeteria Riots. You had Cooper's Donuts riots. There was the Black Cat riot. So all of those things happened anywhere from 5 to 10 years before Stonewall ever even happened. And just like Stonewall, it was led by Black trans women. And that's kind of the way that I look at Pride, is I try to take Pride as my time to really boost and elevate even more so, like how much Black trans women have paved the way for all of us. Like they are the ones that really kicked it off. And, you know, even with Stonewall, you know, Marsha P. Johnson, Pay It No Mind Johnson, you know, I think
I love it.
she was she's been credited for like throwing the first brick at Pride and Stonewall. She threw a brick at the police. I think later on in life she came back and was like, "Nah, that wasn't me." But we gonna credit it to her because she did so much for our community. So Marsha Pay It No Mind Johnson, she did, yeah. But you got Marsha P. Johnson, you got Sylvia Rivera, you got Miss Major. Like those are the people that like I've come to put on this pedestal. The ones that I've come to be like, yo, this is what pride means. Like not all this whitewash, capitalistic, rainbow BS that's out there now. Like Pride was started by Black trans women, and it's been held up by Black trans women. Like none of this, like none of what, like I'm getting married next year. Like I would not be able to do that if it hadn't have started for them, you know? So it's like, that's the way that I look at Pride. It's just like,
can you say that part again? Because I want Erin to capture that. Erin does our admin. Pride was, I want you to say it because my skin crawled when you said it. Pride was started by Black trans women.
Pride was started by Black trans women. Yes. And it's been held up by Black trans women. It's been elevated by Black trans women. Like they have always been at the front of everything queer. And we have not given them the recognition that they need. You know, like everything else in history, it's been whitewashed, you know? And it's like, no, I'm going to take every opportunity that I can to be like, this, our people started this.
This is where it started. This is where, and I love that. And I'm going to post that. And I'm going to put you in a quote, if you don't mind, on my own social media.
Yeah. No, that's good.
Jennifer say, shout out to her state, California Pride. Your state is the best state. I will say, living here, California is a whole brand of its own. And then is it historic? SF riots where trans folks too begin Stonewall. Yes, California has deep, deep trends. And Black trans women started it. Black trans women have upheld it and maintained it and continue to pave the way, right?
Yes.
Because I firmly believe it's always the most oppressed, most marginalized group who have the most,
who do the most,
who have the most to lose, who have the most risk, that put it all out there. And I appreciate that. So Pride for you is really celebrating those women and their contributions and how they've opened up doors for you in your own rights.
Yeah, definitely. And it's just like, I didn't know any of this as a kid. Like as a Black kid growing up in Arkansas, like the only thing I knew about being gay was like all the gay people went to West Hollywood and San Francisco. So I was like, all right, when I grow up, I'm going to West Hollywood, I'm going to San Francisco. But like now that I'm older and I think back on those things, I'm like, I never saw any Black queer people in any of that representation. And so like, once I got into college and I started like learning about all of this, it just like, it blew my mind. I'm like, yo, we've been at the forefront, like, and so I think for me, it's like, I've taken on this responsibility to keep trying to pave this way that our elders, our ancestors really kicked off 60, 70 years ago, I mean, I'm sure there was some stuff going on before then, but from what we know, like that's really where it kicked off. And so for me, it's like, I want to take whatever privilege that I have now as a, I'm an elder now, most Black trans women, non-binary folks, like they're so many of them died before the age of 35, and I'm not quite 35 yet, but I am on the older age range of people that are alive and like getting to reap some of the benefits. And I'm like, I don't want to stop here. Like we're going to keep building on this. We're going to keep paving a way. I'm going to be as out as possible for the people that don't feel comfortable, don't feel safe to be out, don't have the support that I have to be out. So yeah, that's pride for me.
That's pride. I feel pride. Like I feel pride now with you just talking about it, and I want to continue to have this conversation on other platforms, and I just feel it in my belly, and I think it's amazing. It's wonderful, and I hope to circle back to that piece of being an elder and what that means for you. But I want to, the educator in me, the professor in me wants to give people some common language, right, so that they can really understand. So we understand where pride originates from. when we talk about LGBTQ plus, like we've dropped some names already. We said queer, we said trans, we said non-binary. Let's just take a step back and just provide some general descriptors on what it means to be your definition, right? Because we do know that everybody defines things for themselves by themselves. But what does it mean to be LGBTQ plus? And then we're gonna take that further to mental health in the workplace.
I'm actually glad that you said this, because I was actually having this conversation with my fiance the other day, and like, and this is just my own thing. I get so frustrated when people like say LGBTQ plus, but then they lump allies into that plus, and I'm like, we appreciate allyship. I've heard that so many times, like especially like when you see LGBTQIA, and people are like, I've been in presentations and people be like, oh, what's the A stand for? And before I can even get it out, someone else is like, oh, well, that's allies, and I'm like, no. We appreciate your allyship, but this is ours, you know. So L, lesbian, bisexual, gay, trans, and then the plus. I mean, there's so many labels that we can go from the plus. You've got intersex, asexual, queer. Like there's if we listed all of them, it would be so long. So I usually stay away from LGBTQ just because, honestly, for me, saying the term queer feels a lot more encompassing of it all. Like, queer can be your gender identity, it can be your sexual orientation, it can be the type of sex that you like to engage in, it can be your politics. So I like the word queer just for that reason. And like for myself personally, queer is like, it covers so much of my identity. If I just say I'm queer, like this person may take it as, oh, okay, I only date women. This person takes it as this person takes it as that. And it's like, for me, it's all of it. I'm non-binary, I'm masked, I'm a Black queer person, I am pansexual, I am kinky. Like, to me, that's what queer means. And so when people tell me that they identify as queer, I'm like, okay, like, what does that mean to you? Because I know it may not necessarily mean the same thing that it does to me. And like, even my fiance, she now self-identifies as queer, and the way that she identifies is very different from me. So I like that, just because it's a quick answer, and if people want to get into it, they can ask more questions, or you can leave it at that and be like, okay, that's cool.
Right. Queer. It could be an invitation, right? Because it could be complex. It means so many different things for so many different people.
Many different things. Yeah.
And I see the questions. We have a question segment. We'll get to pronouns and pronoun descriptions and the importance of that later on. But when we were talking about this show specifically, it's Pride Month, and for those of you who missed it, I hope you can catch the intro where Casey really talked about what pride meant to them, and, honoring their ancestors and telling those stories, and understanding that Black trans women have been the leaders of this movement, for queer folks, and maintaining that movement and feeling obligated to them to kind of uphold it, because Casey considers themselves as an elder. Right. Which, because,
crazy.
And for those people who joined in, can you repeat that again? Like, what that eldership means to you and why it's so important?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that, I'll in later on this year, I'll be 33, and growing up, I never knew anyone that was older that I could look up to and be like, oh, okay, like, this is somebody that I can see myself in. This is someone that loves like me or loves similar to me. And so, just the simple fact that so many of us die before the age of 35, and we don't get to see that life. Like, we definitely have some older ones. Like, I met Miss Major like 3 years ago, and it took everything in me not to geek out. It was just like, I'm looking at this older woman who was there at Stonewall, who has been fighting for years. So it's just crazy. So like, I've taken on this role because I realized, like, these teenagers that are growing up now, like, they don't have a whole lot of people that are older than me that look like me and think like me and are very similar to them. So I want to step into that role as best as I can. And, I don't want anyone to be just like me. I want you to pave your own way. But I also want people to be able to look out and be like, dang, like, there's KC, like, they're 40 years old, and, they're living this life, and it's a very normal normal life, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be full. It doesn't have to constantly be full of trauma and hate. And like I have so many great people around me, and I want to showcase that like you can be who you are, and you can love the way that you do. And if you find the right people, they're gonna love you, and they're gonna uphold. They're gonna uplift you, and they're gonna support you in everything possible.
That's what I want to talk about tonight. I love that. Like, I think that there is trauma, there is pain, there is structural, discrimination, racist, discrimination. But I do want to tap into it a little bit, what that positive mental health looks like. Like, that's what I want to lift up all month. Like, I want to lift up what that looks like. But before we get there, let's take it a step further, right? And Jennifer, you are absolutely right. To call yourself an ally as part of LGBTQ+, I didn't know that's what the A stood for. It's very presumptuous. And I'm pissed about it. I said it.
Yes.
So, and I got permission because KC said they pissed too. So we both pissed about it.
Yes.
So
I hate that.
you say that you identify as queer. Queer can mean so many different things. For you, it gets at your sexual identity as well as your gender identity as well as other aspects of you. But everybody don't know that, right? So you take that into the workplace. So I know this is a very big question to tackle, right? But the implications of being queer, right? The title is genderqueer, but just queer in general in the workplace, like that all these pieces of your identity could be visible or hidden. Like what does that look and feel like, especially in your profession as an LPC working for the Razorbacks?
Yes. So now I can say that I'm very comfortable in it. Like I can show up fully as me, and I don't feel like I have to look a certain way or be a certain way in front of people. So I'm gonna take a few steps back to where I started. Whenever I graduated college and started moving into the workforce, so this was 10 years ago now, I was like, okay, I've gone through college, and all through college I was very masked. I played basketball in college, so I could walk around in basketball shorts all the time, and no one really batted an eye. I was like, I was a basketball player.
And just for the folks listening, mask. What's mask, Casey?
Masculine. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I started geeking out on all this stuff and just started talking.
That's why I'm here. I'm here to bring it in. Really,
so masculine. So I'm masculine presenting, and if I say femme, I just mean feminine. Okay. So coming out of college, and I knew that I needed to get my first adult job, and so every interview that I ever went on before the age of probably 27 was very feminine. It was, a shirt similar. Well, I don't have a chest like you do, but like a shirt similar to LaWanda here. Tight pants, heels, like hair done a certain way and all that. And it's like, that's the only way that I knew to show up. Because even like with all the like workshops and stuff that we did as seniors, like it was like girls show up to interviews like this, boys show up to interviews like this. And there was, at the time I didn't identify as non-binary because I didn't know what it meant. So it was just like, okay, well, I can't go to an interview in a suit because that's going to confuse people. So I was like, I may as well be uncomfortable if I want to have a job. And so I did that whole dance for 5 or 6 years. And then it was around the time actually that I met my fiance, and we were talking, and I was getting ready to interview, and I was like, I don't really know what to wear. Like, I want to be comfortable, but like, I can't really show up like this. And she was like, why not? Like, she's like, if they don't want you for who you are, then that's not where you need to be. She's like, you are brilliant, you are incredibly smart, and that's the only thing that should matter. So go into this interview the way that you want to go into this interview. And I did, and I ended up getting that job. And like, when she said all that, I was like, she's right. Like, why do I want to work somewhere that's not going to accept me for me? The way that I dress, the way that I look, none of that has any weight on the work that I can do. I've always had a great GPA. Like, just because this person shows up this way and I show up this way doesn't mean that they're going to do a better job. Like, it may make you feel
based on
more
presentation,
right? Like, it may make you feel more comfortable, but that's more about you. That's not about me. So, all that to say, now where I am, like, if you meet me, you're gonna get all of KC. You're gonna get all of KC, and it's like, it's been interesting to navigate that at times, because when I meet people in work settings that they're not quite sure how to address me, and I always tell people when I'm doing presentations, like, being afraid to ask a queer person or someone that you assume or that you presume as queer, like what their pronouns are, how they identify or whatever, generally that's more uncomfortable for cisgender, so people that identify with the sex that they were assigned at birth, and straight people. It's a lot more uncomfortable for y'all. Like us, we want you to ask. Like to me, that feels so respectful for you to ask me, what pronouns do you use? How do you identify? What name do you go by? Like that feels so much more respectful than you just assuming. So yeah, that's like the way that I kind of move and work now. Is just like this is me. I show up in button up tees and pants and some chino pants and some nice shoes, and that's who I am.
That on that.
That's
and
yeah.
I think
that's that.
I think that really gets to the question, and I want to kind of talk about that. Please tell me your name. It's ESORAC. Please explain the importance of pronouns. I think you just said it. We have a lot of assumptions. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Casey, like check me, call me in, we good like that. So I feel like there's a lot of assumptions about how people identify in terms of their gender, right? Their gender expression. Like, do they consider themselves male, female, queer, non-conforming, non-binary? Right. And we make those assumptions based on what we see. Like, what are their phenotypical presentations? Arguably, to be fair, sometimes what you see is safe to say, okay, I would say if you look at me with this lipstick, this makeup on, this shirt off my shoulder, my hair, you would assume that I identify as a female, right? And I would say, yes, I identify as a female. Yep. You may look at Casey and you may say, oh, okay, how do they identify, right? Yep. So when we don't want to make assumptions because we don't know if it, like, let's just say I did identify as non-conforming or non-binary and I'm struggling with that, which is a whole nother conversation about gender dysphoria and so forth. And you refer to me as a female or she or her, it could be triggering. So one of the things that we can do to kind of be safe, if you will, Casey, is to say, how do you identify? Like, what are your pronouns?
To any and everybody.
To any and everybody.
I say this all the time, like, it's a lot easier not to offend someone if you just blanket statement that to everyone. Like, I can look at you and be like, okay, she looks like a woman, but I shouldn't just assume that, because like you just said, like maybe you are dealing with some gender dysphoria, and I have friends now who are very feminine presenting and they identify as non-binary, but because their gender is expressed in a feminine way, they're like, I don't know how to correct people because it's always she, her, or miss this. And it's like, well, this is the way I'm presenting. So, and it's like, they present that way because they're comfortable that way, but that doesn't necessarily mean that up here that they only identify as a woman. And so I like to tell people, like, yeah, generally we can kind of assume and be like, okay, that's a woman, that's a man. But if we just start to ask people pronouns or provide our own pronouns whenever we are being introduced to someone, that does make the space feel a little bit more comfortable for everyone. Like, I love it when I meet people and they're like, hey, my name is Bob and I use he, him, and his. Awesome. Thank you. Because you just invited me to share my pronouns.
Right. I was about to say, what does that communicate to you? Right.
Yeah. And like when people do that, I'm like, you just invited me to do this. And now I don't necessarily know. I don't want to speak for everyone, but for myself, anytime I'm meeting a new person, I'm always like, how are they going to perceive me? And when someone introduces themselves and they provide their pronouns to me, that takes away a layer for me to be like, I'm gonna keep my distance from this person until I know them well enough. It's like, oh, okay, you might actually respect me, and so like I'm more willing to engage in a conversation with you. So yeah, I love it when people provide me with their pronouns first. I'm like, okay, cool. Like,
because would it be fair to say, thank you, Cynthia, for providing your name. Would it be fair to say that it can communicate some level of psychological safety for you to know that you're being conscious of, this particular community, of the queer community, people who may not be on the binary. So that, and that leads me to the next point. Like, that to me fosters some sense that psychological safety is what we need for positive mental health, right? Yes. Like, we want to feel safe. We want to feel like people are aware of the complexity of gender, the complexity of sexuality, and not just kind of limited in one perspective, because the chances are high, If you are not aware, you're probably going to microaggress me or offend me or trigger me in some type of way, and that impacts
right
my
there.
mental health.
Yeah. And that right there, like you're going to trigger me. Like I was actually talking to a friend yesterday, just kind of we were talking about gender identity, and it hit me in that moment. I was like, I never really thought about it. I mean, I think I knew it was there, but I never actually just sat and thought about it. I think about my gender every single day, like, and multiple times throughout the day, like several times throughout the day, I am reminded in some way that I am not normal, that I identify very differently from a lot of people around me, that most of the world is very binary, and I need to pick a side. And it occurred to me in that moment, I was like, those things are very triggering. However, if I allow myself to become overwhelmed and anxious and very emotional in that moment, I would never get through my day, because it happens so often. And she is a cisgender straight Black woman. She was like, Casey, whenever I think about my gender, it's only about safety. Like, and when I'm walking down the trail, am I safe? Like, she's like, I don't think about it the way that you just did. And she was just saying like how like it gave her a different perspective, like how often this thing. And I'm like, so I'm constantly moving through the world thinking about my gender, constantly thinking about being Black, and it's just like it's always something, you know. The wheels are always turning, and I don't say that to be like, oh, you know, woe me. I've learned to cope with it, but I want people to be aware of like we're not just moving through our life every day and only thinking about everyday things. Like, these are things that are always on the back of our mind, just like a lot of Black people. Yeah, just like a lot of Black people. Like, when we're going into spaces, it's like, am I going to be the only Black person here? How are these people going to act? Who's going to say something? Like, it's the exact same thing. Exact same thing.
And I want to unpack that a little bit more, KC, because we talked about this in our last conversation. It was just so phenomenal. I love gathering with you because I think that you just illuminate things in such a very profound way, but also kind of like in ways that people can digest it. So you have these different markers of your identity that society has kind of like casted as not normal, right? Which impacts mental health. And so I want to talk about the pieces that the things that you have done that have found in the workplace specifically that have helped facilitate positive mental health, and then some of the barriers, right?
Yeah.
So you have these different markers of your identity. You're Black, that's visible, right? You are genderqueer, that's visible. You are queer identified in terms of your sexuality, that's invisible. People may or may not know that. They may make assumptions, but they may or may not know that. And already we've identified 3 minority markers. That's not what the majority, you know, right, is. I try to stay away from normal, but the majority is heterosexual, cisgender, you know, white, arguably, but the global majority is not white.
Yeah, global
so these different things that you're constantly thinking about impact your mental health. Then you take that into the workplace. Right, where you got this whole other code of conduct. So you speak about, you know, at the beginning of your career being very film presenting. Although I cannot even picture you like that.
I know.
I cannot even picture you in that way.
I sent one of my best friends my senior prom picture the other day, and she was like, "Holy shit, you were fine as hell then, and you were still fine as hell." She was like, "But I would never." Yes, I will. I'll share it with you. I'll share because I did. I look good.
I can't even visualize. Although Casey is a Scorpio,
had my nails done and everything.
Casey is a Scorpio. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to misgender you right there.
No, you're good.
Casey is a Scorpio, and so I knew that they had some fights. And so, however you was presenting back in the day or currently, I knew it had a little bit of. I knew you was coming 100 with me.
Oh,
so I digress. Like when you talk about nails and prom and all that, I'm like, let me see that version of KC.
I know.
But but you presented in both ways, right? So I think that I really want to pause to underscore that there was a period of time where you said, although it may have made you uncomfortable, that was the model, that was the rubric, that was the schema. So you were willing to be uncomfortable to land a job. So you presented in this very feminine way, which you do not identify as. Right. And then now, which I'm happy to hear, you're coming to your own. You feel very comfortable and you present as you present. What has been the factors in a workplace that you feel helps cultivate a positive mental health for you? And what factors have you had to navigate that just was detrimental to that mental health?
So I will say the mentors that I had around me, and I'm so thankful and lucky because I like now that I'm back in the athletic department, I am surrounded by those same people that like I showed up to work and they didn't bat an eye. You know, like I went 1 year, I went from 1 year dressing very feminine to the next year dressing very masculine, and they did not bat an eye whatsoever. It was like, okay, like you're here to do a job. And I mean, I started my GA-ship when I was 24, 25, something like that. So they have known me for almost 10 years.
I see your trajectory.
Yeah, let's say 8 years. And they have always supported me. Like they knew I had a girlfriend at the time, and it was like, all right, like, yeah, you and your girlfriend want to come over. And they never made my sexuality or my gender identity feel like it was an issue for them. Because as a GA in the athletic department, I don't know if other departments on campuses work like this, but when you work directly with your supervisor, you are instantly like their like you're their representation. And so that was the thing that I was most worried about, is because if I'm going out and I'm representing, you know, my two mentors, I want to make sure that I represent them in a positive way, because I have to like step into meetings for them if they couldn't be there. And they never once was like, no, I don't want you in this meeting, or hey, I need you to show up to this meeting looking like this. Like they were like, we want you to be comfortable. Like,
right,
come in however you want. And I think that made such a huge difference for me, because I've talked to other people who express their gender very similar to me, and they were like, I wish I would have had that, because for far too long I was going to interviews and I was showing up to work very uncomfortable and kind of hating myself because I wasn't being true to who I was. And I'm so incredibly thankful that they were two Black women. And so I have this very, I don't know, just Black women are, they can just be so supportive, you know? And I think, I would say that helped me so much, because I think it would be very different if when I started in athletics, if I would have had white supervisors or male supervisors. Like this is the first time in my life I've ever worked for a white man, and he is an incredible ally, an incredible advocate. Like he is always fighting for us. We don't have gender neutral bathrooms right now, and he started the job like 5 months before I did, and now they are going to be implementing gender neutral bathrooms.
Great,
because he pushed so hard for it. And I'm like, that's what we need. Like we just need some support, and we just want people to be like, hey, I'm going to fight for you because you're a human and you deserve the same rights that I have. Like it shouldn't be about, well, you can get some of the rights, and
with that face, like, it pisses me off too. It's like,
I hate that. Like when I ask for something. Like, I hate when I ask for something and people be like, well, I'm not asking for nothing crazy. I'm not asking for you to give me an extra $1 million for being Black or for being white. I'm asking for the same things you get on a daily basis. And so I think that the support it's so big, and just feeling included and feeling accepted and feeling like, I can just show up and be me. And that takes so much of the other stress out of being at work.
Right. Because once you have that support, is what I'm hearing, once you feel seen, right? People just see you. They're not trying to put you in a box, that they can see you for who you are. Then when they see you, they accept you, right? They invite you to be who you are by way of support. Then you feel like you now have, is permission too strong of a word, like to show up as yourself?
I think that's a great word. And I often think about, like, as Black people, we get tired of code switching at work all the time, right?
Facts.
Sometimes I just want to talk the way that I talk, but it's like, so like I like, that's one thing I like really try to get Black people to understand. I'm like, if we get tired of doing that, think about
the other layers.
Like it's so many layers to it. So it's like you gotta think about all of these things. Like, queer people code switch too. We show up professional, and I think now that I'm getting older, I've kind of gotten to that point where I'm like, no.
This is what it is. That's how.
I don't. You know. I'm like, I don't want
this. What you gonna get? You gonna get this nose ring. You're going to get this country slang sometimes.
Yes,
You're going to get these lines. And that's just blackness, right? And so what you illuminate, I think, is so important that I really want people to get. That's just blackness. That's just choosing to be who you are in your blackness. The privileges that I have is that I am a cisgender female. So you're not making these assumptions about my gender. And you don't know I'm heterosexual. You can probably, predict if I don't say otherwise, which we're going to get to your question, Jennifer. But I don't have to navigate these other layers. Like that's the piece that I think the parts that impact mental health. When you're trying to think about and navigate, I'm Black. What's my gender identity? What's my sexual identity? What are people projecting? Because it's really about people. It's never about the person. It's and what they're projecting on you. Projecting onto you how they think you should be. And if they haven't been exposed to something different or they haven't, brought in their perspective, then they start to box you, and that's what impacts your mental health. But positive mental health, I want to be able to have you kind of illuminate for people, is feeling seen, feeling validated, having support, and giving yourself permission to really just show up as your authentic self. Yeah.
And just like being able to express the joy that I have of being Black and being queer. Like I'm queer year round, but it's nice to like be a little extra in June, like
I love it. That's a quote again. Aaron, I'm queer year round, but in June you take it up a notch.
Just a little extra. Just a little extra. And it's like and the people that I have around me, like my direct supervisor and my coworker, it's just three of us in our department, but the athletic department is huge. But it's like, people just allow me to show up. And we were talking the other day, and someone had made the comment and was like, "Oh, you're probably the only non-binary person or trans person in the athletic department." And I was like, "Probably not." But someone else maybe doesn't feel comfortable being out, And I'm like, if I can be out and like I feel very comfortable, like they don't have to come, they don't have to be out, they don't have to share this part of their life with work. Like, if you want to keep working your personal life separate, that's cool. But I also want people to like see me and be like, okay, like Casey is able to navigate this environment. And if someone does want to reach out and talk to me, like my door is always open. I actually have, like, I would never share this with any of my coworkers, but I have had people in the athletic department reach out and be like, hey, I actually identify as this, how do you navigate this? How do you navigate this? Like, I kind of want to talk to my supervisor about it and just like let them know, because they keep asking if I have a boyfriend, if I have a girlfriend, like, how do I navigate these conversations? So I'm like, like I'm here to help anyone, because I know how it felt back in the day. Like I grew up in this country, right? I grew up in the Black community, so everything about being queer, I was being told that I should hate that part of myself. And when you constantly hear people saying, faggot this and dyke this, and it's just like, you start to take it on yourself. You start to take it on yourself, and it's like, oh, I'm this shitty person. I'm this horrible person that, I need to kill this part of myself. And I'm like, I love that part of myself. Like being queer, being non-binary, like that has allowed me to take off all these boxes about my life. Like I now know my life doesn't have to look a certain way. Like I don't have any restrictions about how I need to show up in the world, because I can just show up as myself. And it's also allowed me to like share that with other people. Like when people come to me and they tell me a part of themselves, I'm like, okay, that's cool. Like why should I have any judgment about your life? Like that you live your life and I'm going to live my life, and I'm going to love you for being who you are. Like unless you are a pedophile or something, like I want all of us.
Casey said that's why I draw the line.
I do gotta draw a line somewhere.
I love it.
I want people to show up as themselves. Yeah.
And you want that. Like I love that what you just shared. It's like, these parts of yourself, specifically as growing up as Black, the Black culture is very homophobic, very transphobic in a lot of ways. And I think it's important to name that, and that those messages you internalize. And I hope that Black folks out there hear that. Like people may not be identifying as queer, or as non-binary, or as,
Yeah.
On the spectrum, non-conforming, but they may identify that way. Maybe they don't have the language, but that's how they
Yep.
identify. So we got to be mindful of our words, because people internalize that and it impacts their mental health in some capacity. And we want them to
100%.
love every part of themselves, because I love those parts. The very parts that you just mentioned is the very parts that I love about you, that I think have made this a great working relationship. So I'm grateful. I'm full. We're going to continue this part 2 outside of the break room, but I think it's been really good. We get to this segment where we've been talking so much, but I appreciate y'all for engaging when we actually take in questions. So I hope we've answered your question, Cynthia, on the importance of pronoun descriptions, because of this very reason. Like some things that Casey just said. Sometimes we're asking people if they have boyfriends, girlfriends, and it could be completely misgendering it. It could be completely rooted in a lot of assumptions that they are not sure how to navigate. And then I want to ask this one question before we do wrap up, Casey.
I can't see the questions.
Oh, okay.
Am I supposed to be able to see the questions? Oh, okay.
I got you. Jennifer asked, Jennifer said, I recently was illuminated to how some folks in the LGBTQ, we're going to take off that A now that I've learned what it is, are faced with the decision.
We're going to come back to that, because I'll tell you what I used. I describe the A for asexual. So I'm fine with it on there. I just don't like it when they be like,
okay. Yeah. All right, that's good. All right, but back up. Let me back up. Because that's the Scorpio in me, y'all. Once I learn, like, because y'all think you can't even put yourself in that identity. Anyway, okay, so asexual, I'm assuming it's asexual. I recently was illuminated to how some folks in the LGBTQIA are faced with the decision to come out, Jennifer put in quotations, in new groups, environments, work, or otherwise. This experience never dawned on me, and Jennifer feels embarrassed by that, embarrassingly. Can you please share your perspective on that and the implications, if any, to your mental health, on this idea that the decision to come out in new environments and the implications to mental health?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Thank you, Jennifer. I think a lot of people, myself included, like when I was growing up, look at coming out as like this one time, like this big one time event, and that's never the case. Like we have to come out sometimes almost daily, just depending on what environments we're moving in. But really, anytime we step into a new environment, for sure, if we feel that it is a safe and supportive enough environment, we do come out. And like to this day, I'm very comfortable with who I am, but if I'm moving into a space that doesn't feel comfortable or safe for me to be like, I'm non-binary and I use they, them, and their pronouns, I don't share that, because I have to, at the end of the day, like as comfortable as I am with myself, I still want to be alive.
Right.
I still want to be
and we still
safe.
live in that hateful world. Yeah.
And so it's like, and even like the whole concept of coming out, and like this is kind of something that I've been reading and thinking about and having conversations with my friends about. The whole coming out is a very Western ideal, and I really like every now and then I do use coming out or being out. I like sharing, sharing or opening up, because it's like, I don't know. To me, I'm like, the way that I look at coming out and the way that I look at the closet, it feels very shameful.
Yeah.
And I don't want people who have not shared or who have not come out yet to feel shame about that. If it's not safe or comfortable for you to be out and for you to, celebrate pride in the way that like a lot of us do, I don't want you to do that, but I also don't want you to feel shame about it. Like
that you haven't come out.
Yeah. We don't make straight people come out. So why, so why should we have to come out? And so
right.
I like go back and forth. I'm like, I get the whole like, National Coming Out Day and being out and like what all of that means. And I describe myself as very out to help other people. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best way to shift that language so that it doesn't feel as shameful. And that's what I like to tell people. It's like, whenever people say, hey, I identify as this, I just say, thank you for sharing with me. Like, not, good job on coming out or anything like that. Right. I'm glad that you entrusted me with that. Like, that is such a huge part to people. So I would say, if you ever have someone open up and share that part of their life with you, like, thank them, because it's hard. And
what I'm hearing
hard.
you say is that it has huge implications to not only people's mental health, Jennifer, but their physical health. Because, you know, I've worked with a number of clients who are in families, even, you know, in spaces that is not physically, it's not their safety, like their legit safety is jeopardized if they were to identify as queer or trans or, you know, gay or lesbian or what have you. So,
LaWanda, the number of kids that I have worked with, it has blown my mind that have been through conversion therapy. I am shocked. Like, I thought this was
gone, over and done with.
Gone. And I have worked with a number of kids who have told me they have gone off to like church camps and they later figured out that they were conversion camps. And I'm just like, this is still happening. This is still happening after all this evidence has come out.
There's no evidence to support. Let me be clear.
Yes.
There's no evidence to support conversion therapy works. For those of you who do not know, conversion therapy,
not even in the church.
I'm wrong, Casey. Not
even in the church.
Not even in the church. Not even with the sweet Lord Jesus, because I don't believe that's the sweet Lord Jesus doing that. When you believe that you can send people to spaces, to camps, to therapy, to these groups where they can be converted and get rid of their queerness, get rid of their sexuality, get rid of their gender identity, is not the case. Really, these people who are sending people need to be in the camps. They need to be in therapy.
They need to be somewhere.
To deal with their own internalized homophobia, their own internalized transphobia, their own internalized views that could be rooted in generational eras. But it's no support of that. In fact, what the research does tells us that does more harm. For people, they have to recover from that.
And I haven't quite figured out how to help people. Like that's something. I mean, that's trauma. You know, it's trying to work through that. I mean, it's just like any other traumatic event that people go through.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't mean to derail us there, but I had to get that out.
That needs to happen. I mean, it leads me to my point that I want to wrap us up before we go into the last nerve. Like, Casey, what would you say to people? Like, you know, we've covered a lot. We've covered what pride means to you. You know, some people believe it started at Stonewall. Others know that the SF, San Francisco, you know, the Bay Area, you know, can be the birth of that. We've talked about what it means to identify as LGBTQIA+, what that means for you, what it's like being genderqueer in the workplace, the impact of mental health. And what I want to focus and harp on is, you know, positive mental health. Like, as a person who identifies, you know, as with these minority markers, what do you want people to know about their role in facilitating positive mental health for people who identify as queer? What we all play a role. What is their role? What is our roles?
I mean, the best advice that I can give people, and this is, I mean, you know, it sounds however it sounds, but it's just like, we're all humans, right? Like, we all want to be treated like a human. We all want to be treated with basic human rights. And it's really not that difficult. Like, I feel like people really go out of their way to not treat people like humans, you know, to treat people like less than. And I'm like, if you can just take that effort and put it into really seeing someone, like truly seeing someone, connecting with someone, like get proximate with someone. Like I use that term all the time. Like you don't know what other people are dealing with if you've never been around a queer person, you don't know the issues in the queer community. If you've never been around a Black person, you don't know the issues in the Black community. Like you may have read some stuff, but until you really talk to a Black person, until you really talk to a queer person, until you really talk to a trans person, you don't really know how they feel or how these things impact them. You can read all the research articles and all the whatever on the news, but it's like, really take a moment, take a chance to get to know someone and think about how you would want to be treated in that situation. Like, think about how you would want to be treated, period. Like, don't nobody want to be sent to a conversion camp. Like, don't nobody want to be microaggressed against. Don't nobody want to
make assumptions about who they are all the time.
Exactly. You want to live your life as happily and as joyfully and as loving as you can, and it be other people that mess all of that up. You know, like you be the other folk. Like when I always tell people, when I'm like around my Black queer friends, that is the most relaxed that I feel. It is the most love that I feel. It is the most joy that I feel, because it's like we all understand one another and we show up with love, and like each of us need to be loved differently, and we respect that. Each of us need to be shown affection differently, and we respect that. And it's like there's still so much that the rest of humanity, the rest of the world can learn from Black, queer, trans, non-binary people.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, if we just take the chance to do it, like
be proximate.
It's been us fighting for everybody. Now we're not picking and choosing who we fight for because they, we see them. We're fighting for everybody. We even fighting for white women. We even fighting for white men that need it every now and then. Like we fighting for we trying to make it a better world for everybody.
Bless y'all heart.
I know we got so much love. We got so much love to share. Just let us.
And we want to do our part, KC. Like I have definitely, I appreciate that, and I hope people have heard that and that people have taken it in. That you got to connect. You got to get proximate. In proximity to connect to the humanity. When you connect to the humanity, all the other socialization, all the other boxes, the assumptions should come undone. And when you connect to a humanity, just like, you're connecting with people who tell you how you want to be held or not held, touched or not touched, love or not love, that is the same thing with, I believe, queer folks. I think that that's the same thing with Black queer folks. And we have to show that level of empathy and interest in humanity to be able to connect to that. And that connection should involve action. Because you're going to hear the discrimination, the challenges that they face, and we hold privilege in being able to fight some of those good fights.
And when you say that, like that's an easy way to fight for us. Like we are misgendered or microaggressed against every day, and we get sick and tired of like fighting for ourselves every day. Like if you hear someone misgender someone, like step in. Like don't make it to where that person has to fight for themselves. Step in and be like, hey, actually, this person uses these pronouns. Right. And hopefully the other person just says, oh, okay, my bad. And leave it alone. And if it escalates, like you know which side you got to pick. Like, right. You can't be like, well, they didn't mean.
No. Be ready.
Yeah. Like that is so simple. And it feel like whenever I have people step in and be like, oh, actually, Casey uses, they, them, and their pronouns. I'm like, thank you. Like I feel very.
Would say, would you say then if you're going to be in proximity, I hope you understand what it means to have a person's back, because that could happen, right? Yep. I've seen that happen. That has happened. I've had to say different things to different people, because you can see the stunned look on people's face of like. Yeah. Most times when the person who's being misgendered or microaggressed, it's just the same thing with Blackness. Yeah. When you feel it, it's like, damn, can you chill out? Yeah. Like for real.
You just made everybody uncomfortable. But right. I love it because it whenever you do that, it makes that other person, like, it makes them recognize, like, oh, like I'm kind of the asshole here, right. And not like to make anybody feel bad, but it's like, oh, like there other people are on board with this, and it's me right. that's not getting on board, and I don't want to be outcast. Like nobody right. wants to be outcast, and so for the most part, unless you're just a jerk, they're gonna be like, okay, you're right. My bad. I'm gonna work on that. It's like if you make a mistake, that's fine. I'm not saying don't mess up. Like if you mess up, just be like, hey, my bad, and keep it pushing. Like don't be like, oh, I'm all for the LGBTQ community. My bad. I would never. No, just apologize and keep the conversation moving.
I try to model it. Yes. Even having
I think you did a perfect. You had a perfect example earlier. Like you misgendered me. It's like, hey, my bad. And kept it going. Like that's literally all we want. Because when you start doing all the other stuff, we'd be like, okay,
now it's uncomfortable. Then it becomes
take it down.
About you.
Yeah, like it's not about you. Like just
you know what? Okay, this is perfect because that's the perfect pivot. I want you to think about if you have the emotional capacity. If not, you can make your last nerve something different. So I don't want to, overburden you, because if somebody asks me, most times my last nerve is about some anti-black shit. Because it's just so prevalent, Yeah. But if that's not your thing, let it not be your thing. Oh, when you think about all these examples that we've talked about of like people misgendering or microaggressing, or what does pride mean, and rainbows and all this shit, I want to give you 90 seconds to talk about what is it that gets on your last nerve. And you could be free speak candidly that you want people to know.
Okay.
And I'm gonna sum it up for you. Hold on. Let me get my
Ooh. All right. I only got 90 seconds. I ain't had a lot of time to think about this. It may not come out in the most PC and eloquent way, but I'm gonna let it flow.
That's the whole point of it, KC.
I'm gonna let my ancestors flow through me.
Flow through you. Okay, hold on. Let me get it again. 1 minute 30. Hold on. I'm gonna tell you.
I may not even need 90 seconds.
And go. Give it to us.
All right. First thing, if it's Pride Month, do not be asking queer people to do stuff for the free. I've had friends ask for their artwork. I've had friends ask to come speak on things. I've had friends ask to contribute to all these like different things, and it's like it benefits the organization. You throw your little rainbow and trans flag on, and it benefits you, and it ups your net worth. But it does nothing. Hey, sorry, my dog is drinking. Hey, drink later. It does nothing to help our communities. Like it's the same with Black people too. Like you don't stop asking Black people to do stuff for free. Like it pisses me off. It's like you want to look like the most woke and the most accepting and the most LGBTQ friendly places and people, and it's like there's so much more action that needs to happen if you are a ally, if you are anti-racist. Like there's so much action that needs to happen. You can't just throw the words out there. So that's my number one thing. Being anti-Black, it's just, come on. It's 2021. It's 2021. Step into it. Step into 2021. It's so past being. We're so done with the anti-Blackness. Like, oh, they're going.
No, keep going. Wrap it up.
We're done with the anti-Blackness. That's all I want to say. We're done with the anti-Blackness. It's like this world, this country, especially. We could be so much better. We could be so much better if this country would value Black and brown people the way that they need to. We make everything better. Everything that white people have, we have taken and made so much better. Everything from our cultures that they want to steal, like we make things great. So if you want to talk about making America great, you got to look to us because y'all have been in charge of this country since whenever the hell, I don't even know my history, 1776, but a little bit before then. Y'all have been in charge of this country for so long. Open it up. I'm not saying give it all to us, but you got Black people, you got Latinx, you got natives that can make this country really be what it was founded to be. If you would just relinquish some of that power, relinquish some of that control, and let us fix it. Like let us make this country good, and give us some money. Give us some reparations, and land back. That's all I love it,
Casey. Y'all, folks, I was about to say, ladies and gentlemen, there I go. People, Casey Cross. I hope you have thoroughly enjoyed Casey Cross. Casey, you have convicted me.
You got me sweating.
You have. That's what that last nerve should do. If you ain't sweating, you ain't did it right. You ain't did it right. So, y'all, I'm so grateful. I'm so indebted to you, Casey. Please, and I mean this sincerely. Please send me an invoice. Right? Please send me an invoice. Thank you for your vulnerability. Thank you for your labor. Thank you for your time. This is the month where you get to take it up a notch. I be knowing because I'm like Juneteenth and Black History. Yeah, I'm about to be extra Black. So
hopefully nobody from work is on this. But last year they gave us Juneteenth off, and they sent an email out this year about being off, and I'm like, I'm taking the day off anyways. I'm not using no PTO. I'm gonna be off that day. Don't ask me to do nothing. It's Juneteenth.
If 2020 ain't taught y'all nothing, you need to understand if corporate is listening, please make Juneteenth a national holiday at your job, or a day off at your job.
A day off, yeah, a paid day off.
A paid day off. You've been incredible, Casey. I have thoroughly enjoyed you. I got some quotes. I'm about to be quoting you all over my social media. We definitely have enjoyed you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Cynthia, for your questions. Thank you for those of you who have engaged, and for those of you who are going to listen. I really ask that you listen with an open heart and a posture of curiosity, because this that's where empathy can begin, right? And that's where ignorance can be torn down. So thank you so much for that, Cassie. We got to have you again.
Thank
Y'all
you. You know, it's always a good conversation.
Thoroughly enjoyed you. Enjoy the rest of your night, and I hope that y'all will join us next week, same time, same place, as we wrap up season 1 of The Break Room.